Okay, so this is a different style video.
No shit, jackass.
But I'm gonna start this off summarizing up the Railway series in the best way I can. So long story short, a while ago I asked my friends on Discord if they had to describe the Railway series in one word, what would it be? And trust me, I got some pretty crazy responses. No, like for real, take a look.
That was a foul!
Tell it to your mama, Squidward!
The word I would use to describe the Railway series, I know this probably is gonna be very weird choice for a word. The Abyss. The Abyss means something deep and has lots of stuff in it, and that basically just describes the Railway series as a whole. There's a lot of mysteries in the Railway series that still have not been solved, like mysteries like, did Godred actually exist at one point? Or is the 2 Henry theory actually true? We may never know. What's in a theory, right? But today we're not talking about any conspiracy theories or like any of the mysteries in the Railway series. No, for real, that's a topic for another day. Today we're talking about the top 10 Railway series books I think should have happened and should have been written. In my personal opinion, I think these books would have added more lore to Wilbur's original 26. But before we get started, let's keep a few things in mind. 1, this is not a Chris hate video. I like Chris as much as the next guy. I have nothing personally against him, but I wish his books added a little bit more lore to the Railway series. Like, there were some good volumes here and there, but most of them were kind of just, boring and forgettable, I would say. 2, everything said here is just my opinion. Nothing I say here is fact. Feel free to disagree with me with anything I say. Like, if you guys think there's a book on this list that shouldn't be written at all, that is perfectly fine. Just please be civil while writing your own opinions in the comments. Also, while you're at it, tell me which Christopher Audrey book is your favorite. My favorite is Gordon the High-Speed Engine. And that's really about it. So, without further ado, let's get to the top 10 Railway series books I think should have been written. Number 10. The book starts off in the 80s. It takes place after Devil's Back. So basically, this book would have been about the other mountain engines we never saw in the previous Coley Fell book. In the previous one, we only saw characters like Coley, Lord Harry, or aka Patrick, and Godred. It's debated whether if he's real or not. I mean, my friend Henry said he isn't real, so I like to think that the story's made up.
Neither Skarloey nor Renias ever mentioned that Caldi had made the story up.
I think we can all agree that the Coley Fell Railway engines definitely deserve a second book. Like, come the f*** on! Even the miniature gauge engines got a second book. So screw it. If I was in charge of the Railway series, the first thing I would have done was given the Coley Fell Railway their second book. And here's how I would have went about it. The first story would have been about Wilfred. Well, anything about Wilfred, honestly. I mean, there's not really any ideas I have with Wilfred, so if you guys have any story ideas, let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to hear your opinions about this. But if I had to choose, like, the first mountain engine character I would write a story about, the first would definitely be Wilfred. The other 3 characters I'll also write about in that book would have been Alaric, Eric, and Shane Dooney. Since considering we've never seen Shane Dooney in the previous book, it would be nice to see what he would have been about. And since we don't really know the personalities of Alaric and Eric either, it would have been nice if we can see a story involving those two. The third story would be about in present day, where all the steam engines are getting retired and new diesels are coming to the railway. And I guess if I had to name these 2 diesels, they would be named Tom and Jerry. The steam engines are not so sure of them at first. Like, I'm thinking particularly Lord Harry and maybe Shane Dooney. And maybe Alaric and Eric. But they soon learn to accept them. And nowadays, they just enjoy their time in the shed. But you know what? I feel like I rambled on about this topic long enough. How about we move on to the next one? Number 9. I'm being completely honest, this book was not even my idea. So a while ago, one of my friends, Henry Fan 1 Productions, channel in the description by the way, he came up with the idea, a very great idea, by having a book focus on the road vehicles instead of the engines. Now, I know lots of people are probably not going to be very interested in a book like this, but it is very gorgeous to me.
It's very gorgeous to me.
Like, I understand the railway series is about trains, but I don't think it will hurt to share some light on characters that are on trains. Now, me speaking personally, I don't think it would be hard for us to go off the tracks a bit.
Now, just now, you should feel ashamed of yourself. Sorry.
And plus, to be fair, I think the rail vehicles definitely deserve more time in the spotlight. Like, come on! These are Terrence's only appearance in his first introduction in Tank Engine Thomas again. How do you get 2 pages in a single story? Come on, man. So, the first story would be about Birdie and a new bus. This bus is called Algae, specifically the bus who took over all of Toby's services on this old line. Now, the bus was very rude at first. Not only was he rude to Birdie, but he was also very rude to the engines, especially Toby. Until one day, Algae breaks down and Toby steals the show, saves all his passengers. The second story would be called Harold's Rocky Rescue. A climber gets stuck on the outskirts of the Coldly Fought Railway and it's up to Harold to go save him. But thanks to the wind and the rocky atmosphere, Harold could not go very high. Luckily, he was able to save the climber and bring him back down. Next day, Harold is rewarded with a medal for his services to the railway. He even wins a badge in his honor. The third story will be a Thomas and Terrence story. This story will follow in a similar format to Terrence Breaks the Ice, but instead of Terrence saving Thomas, it's Thomas saving Terrence. The last story will be Algae winning over Toby in the best way possible. Honestly, I think this book would have been great. It wouldn't have been the most eventful or most important book, but it definitely would have been important for our road vehicles, getting to know the road vehicles a little bit more on a deeper level. Alright then, on to number 8. Number 8. The idea for this book sprung up from a conversation between me and one of my other friends, Donnie. Or Olive Oil, whichever one you want to call them. I don't really care. Anyway, we were talking about which railway series books we wish would have happened. And one of the things he talked about is that he wanted to have a book focused on Neville. So that's why I include the book here. So the Northwestern Railway is going through a locomotive crisis, and Donald and Douglas are stretched to the limit with extra work. It finally comes to a boiling point where Douglas finally kicks the bucket and breaks down. Back control then brings in Neville to help out with the work. First, the other engines teased him about his odd appearance, but Donald soon befriended him. And this is how Donald and Neville became friends. And eventually, best friends. Not to mention, Henry also broke down, so Neville also had to help him and take his train, which he successfully wins over Henry in the last story, just before Douglas came back. The book will end with Neville helping out on Edward's branch line, and Douglas returning from the works at long last. So, yeah. I think it will be a very nice book to tribute to the Q1 class. Number 7. Lucky 7, Lucky 7! Just like with the last one, this book also came up between a conversation with me and Donnie. He came up with an idea having a book take place during the winter. Me personally, I think it's a really good idea. There are so many story opportunities you could have done. Like, imagine the story with Sir Handel getting snow sprayed on him, but the snow clogs up his funnel. I feel like that would be cool. The first story has Neville using a tender to run through the snowdrifts, since Donald and Douglas are in the works for repairs. And then the second and third stories will be talking about random escapades on the other railways. I think we'll get one story about the Standard Gauge Railway, then a story about the Scarloey Railway, and then maybe a story about the Arsdale Railway. The last story will be about Neville, Donald, and Douglas teaming up to rescue Bear, who is pulling the Santa Special, or the last train for Christmas. In all the grand scheme of things, I don't think this book will be really important or add any lore to the Railway series or anything. I just think it will be a very unique book to see. We never really had a book that fully takes place in winter. I feel like that would be very unique to see. Number 6. So while the Fat Controller is away on a holiday in England, he came across an old shed. The Fat Controller then decides to investigate it, and what he finds in there is a small yellow tender engine. The engine's name is Molly, and she tells the Topham Hatt her past life and how she'd been abandoned in the shed by her own controller. The Fat Controller then feels sorry for Molly and arranges her to be restored on the island of Sodor. In the second story, we have her reuniting with Gordon and Emily, and they both began reminiscing about the days of the GNR and the LNER. The third story would have been about Molly and James, where Molly and James double-headed a train, and one of the enthusiasts gets onto the line by accident, or I should say by stupidity, and they almost run it over, and luckily they stopped just in time, began shouting at the rail enthusiast while Molly's first shaken about the events. The last story begins with James apologizing to Molly, and it will also involve Molly double-heading the express with Henry, and Molly officially being purchased by Sir Topham Hatt. And I also like to think she gets repainted in the NWR blue, and she now pulls the limited with Bear. That's all I really have to say about this book. I just think this book is really nice, and it definitely uses Molly to her full potential, unlike what the TV series did with her. Only one can dream. I wish they brought her back in CGI. She would have been much better than that Rebecca. Number 5. You know what the funny thing about this book is? I actually posted a few narrations of it on YouTube. If you want to check those out, by the way, links to those are in the description, or you could just go back on my channel history. Anyway, this book starts off with the Northwestern Railway is once again in a locomotive crisis. The engines discuss it in the sheds that night. The next morning, Oliver takes a goods train to the other railway, and he eventually gets lost. He then arrives at Barrow Scrapyard, where he finds a sterling single named Emily. Oliver then escorts her to the island of Sodor, where she is purchased by Sir Topham Hatt. Emily is then restored and sent to work on a Little Western. She then has a little issue with ballast trucks, and she eventually has to go through the task of befriending Burgess. The last story is the grand finale, where Emily finally wins James over in the most anticlimactic way possible. James breaks down, Emily has to come and rescue him. They chat for a little bit at the works, and that's how they became friends. Simple as that. And to be honest, I would love to see this book in their actual railway series. This book would have been amazing to see, and I think this would have been one of the best books in my opinion. And it would be a good way to introduce an 18th century locomotive into the railway series too. Number 4. Okay, so this is a Derek book. So basically, the book basically begins with the opening of Double Teething Troubles, and it basically just plays out exactly how it did in season 5. After that, we then come to the story Failure, where Derek is finally repaired, and he's sent to restore the Peel Gotcha branch. So Topham Hatt also brings back Diesel, who makes fun of Derek for being a failure, until Bear finally stands up for Derek and shafts Diesel, and basically roasts the heck out of Diesel. So Topham Hatt soon sends Diesel packing. Then Barry, who is brought to the island of Sodor to help out, was sent to the Peel Gotcha branch, and he first revealed to be a temperamental engine at first, like an anger management problem, but yeah, Derek was soon able to help him calm down a bit. The last story is the day where the Peel Gotcha branch finally opens and Derek gets to pull the train, the grand opening train, which is what you see here. I honestly think this would have been a good book to introduce how the Peel Gotcha branch line works. I know it doesn't exactly. I know it's run by electric engines in like the books, but you know, one can dream. Alright, we're almost done. Kicking off the top 3, we have... The plot of this book is simple. Bulko takes a midnight goods train down Edward's branch line, but instead is sent down to Sudbury Harbor, where we find Stanley. Stanley then tells him about how he worked on the Wells River Sudbury Railway with Colin, Lily, and Adam. One of the other stories I also came up with was Stanley being sent to Thomas's branch line for a trial run, and Thomas is feeling jealous of him. That's basically about it, all I came up with for this book. But the book will end with Stanley being repainted in Northwestern Railway white, and I like to think maybe Stanley gets a number, and he works on the Brendam branch. And that's really about it. But I think this book would have been very important for us to learn the history of Edward's Line. It also would have told us about what the Wellsford Sudbury Railway would have been about too. Just missing out on the top spot is... This book is focused on Bear, and so this book starts off old stuck up. It starts off with Bear trying to get to be friends with James, and instead of Boko standing up to the Root Diesel, it is Bear who stands up to him. And after that, there's a little story that gets James to like Bear, centered around the two. And the last story will be about Deep Freeze, where instead of the Works Diesel coming to save James, it is Bear who comes and saves James. I honestly think this book should have existed. Like, come on. Like, Bear is such a nothing character. We really needed a book about him to explore what he's really about. But that's just my opinion. It would be nice if this book really did happen, though. And the number one Railway Series book I think should have happened is... With the Mid-Solar Railway being the prime end goal of Wilbert's books, I feel like he could have at least wrote more books about them. Like, come on, we have plenty of characters on the railway. Like, you could have wrote a story about Albert, you could have wrote a story about Stanley, and you could have wrote a story about how the mine closed. And I just feel like you could fill up 2 or 3 books with these type of stories. And I think it would be nice to have Duke tell stories about his old railway, similar to how Thomas did in Grandpa, Sleeping Beauty, and Bulldog. I just think but there's nothing wrong with Duke the Lost Engine. I'm just saying I feel like they could have wrote more stories with the Mid-Solar crew. And plus, imagine using Duke to tell these stories to the railway's newest engine, Iflo Hugh, and use these as life lessons for him. That would be so nice. And those were the top 10 Railway Series books I wish should have been written or made, whatever. Well, I know I've been pretty hard on Chris in this video. Yeah, I still think the books could have added more lore to the Railway Series. I appreciate the more slice of life stories in this books. And also, I'm just glad these books existed at all. If they didn't exist at all, then the Railway Series would be much more shorter than it is. And yeah. Also, if you guys want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments. I'll be more than happy to approach on any other topics. I got other topics in the works right now. But anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios!